I know, I'm sorry. I promise that this video was planned way before you guys said anything, because today we're checking out this monster $1,500 gaming PC. I'm sorry it's not budget. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. Today we're going to be checking out this monster $1,500 RGB gaming PC, which is rocking a Ryzen 5 2600X and a GTX 1080 Ti. And if you want to see more PC building videos or benchmarking videos, then hit that subscribe button down below and also that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But yeah, let's check this thing out. So I think most of us would agree that if our gaming PCs are gonna have RGB in them, we want a nice, simple, and clean design to them and nothing crazy. Well, this build is definitely not simple and clean. The RGB in this thing is actually obnoxious. I would never use a gaming PC with this crazy of RGB in it. I kind of went overboard. Housing all of this fireworks show is the $50 DIY PC Model X case, which I actually just fully reviewed in a separate video, and I also got it for $30 after a mail-in rebate. I'm a big fan of it. It comes with RGB fans, which aren't actually in the case right now, and a huge tempered glass side panel at a pretty good price. The motherboard inside there is the new ASRock X470 Master SLI, which is a full-sized ATX board that's packing a few features that I was after. It's got USB 3.1 and USB-C on the back, built-in Wi-Fi antennas which actually aren't installed but nice to have, an RGB port so you don't need an RGB controller, and two supported PCIe ports for the GPUs. Speaking of GPUs, that's a monster EVGA GTX 1080 Ti that cost me $770 right before those crazy prices happened, but it's obviously way more expensive right now. Looping back to the CPU, that's the brand new Ryzen 5 2600X, which I personally think is the sweet spot for the second generation Ryzen lineup. For just $220, you're getting 6 cores and 12 threads that boost up to 4.2 GHz. That's a pretty sick deal in my opinion. Speaking of sick deals, the RAM we used was the Corsair Vengeance RGB 3600 MHz RAM kit, currently clocked down to 2933 MHz, and I definitely did not get a sick deal on this kit. This 16GB DDR4 kit costs about $225, and it's definitely not a great price to performance ratio, but hey, they definitely look sick. Moving on to the power supply, that's a Seasonic 620 watt bronze certified power supply, which I actually got for $30 after a much appreciated mail-in rebate. It's fully modular and it's rocking pure black cables, and I've been using this a lot in other builds lately. For storage, I have a new Kingston 120GB SSD which just went on sale on Newegg for $30, and there's also a 1TB Western Digital Caviar hard drive in there to store the games. And finally, yeah, there's a ton of RGB in there, but I'm not gonna count that towards the price because you definitely don't need it. The budget RGB fans in there are actually pretty impressive, and I think I'm gonna do an entire video for them, and the RGB strip in there I actually just had laying around. Should I be embarrassed that I have spare RGB strips laying around? Alright, so with the parts list out of the way, it's time to benchmark this monster of a gaming PC. I'm pretty sure that you can find out by just looking at the RGBs and the GTX 1080 Ti that we're definitely not going to benchmark this in 1080p, and we're going to jump straight to 1440p. First up, we gotta start with Fortnight. I don't think I can get away with benchmarking anymore without Fortnight in the mix, and in 1440p with epic settings, aka as high as they go, I averaged 122 FPS and the 1% low was at 73. This was obviously super easy for the system to run, so let's crank it up a bit. Next up was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, aka the most annoying game to benchmark and record footage for, and in 1440p and high settings, I averaged 128 FPS and the 1% low stayed above 70. PUBG is definitely more of a CPU intensive game, so it was nice to see the Ryzen 2600X keep that FPS up high. Far Cry 5 was up next. I actually did a full benchmarking video on this one, and here in 1440p and high settings again, we averaged 97 FPS. Far Cry 5 is definitely a very tough game to run, but in 1440p and high settings, it looks beautiful for sure. And finally, the toughest game to run on our list was Assassin's Creed Origins, and in 1440p with high settings, we could only average 76 FPS. Keep in mind that when I say only, please realize I'm just talking in relative terms here, as this is still a very respectable frame rate, and this is just a really tough game to run, especially that in-game benchmark. So yeah, the results were what I personally expected. This system can destroy gaming in 1440p, as it very well should for $1,500, and I realize that a lot of you aren't actually in the market for this expensive of a gaming PC, but I thought it would be fun to show you what this wild PC can do do. For 1,500 bucks, you definitely could have spent your money a little bit better. You could buy much cheaper RAM and put that money towards a bigger hard drive, or you could even buy a much cheaper B350 motherboard and save some money there. A lot of these parts I had laying around the house and didn't just buy for this build, so just note that this definitely isn't the best value you can get for the price tag. Well, that wraps up my video on this $1,500 monster RGB gaming PC. Be sure to let me know down in the comments section what your opinion is on RGB. Do you actually like this crazy style of RGB, or do you prefer it tame like I do? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please drop a like down below to help support my channel, and as always, thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more Zach's Tech Turf videos.